we have 4 squares completed, and we're going to stitch 2 of them together. Then we'll have 2 halves. And with these seams, you will have 3 interlocking seams, and you'll have 3 stacked seams that you'll have to glue. Otherwise it goes pretty fast. And if you'll notice the center seam here, when you sewed this together in a previous illustration, you'll notice that when you pressed this seam, it was pressed toward the right, like in a clockwise direction. And so this seam also goes clockwise. When you sew these 2 together, you will press this seam in the same direction as these 2 center seams. So all of these seams will be going in a clockwise direction. Before you press the seam you just stitched in, we need to take out some of these stitches at the center that will be at the center of the quilt. This is a seam you just stitched to put 2 of the quarters together, 2 of the small squares together. So if you look, here is the seam again, and if you look right above it, the stitches that go on the diagonal, we are going to take those out. So let's do that now. What I do is I cut this one at the bottom, and then I just pull the others out like this. So those are out. Take this one. And then you flip it over. I'll get that loop later. So let's flip it over, and we see the same thing. This is the seam we just stitched, and here are the diagonal seams that we're going to remove. So I'll pull this out. There's usually 3, 4, 5 stitches, depending on what your stitch length was. So I'll pull these out, and what this is going to do, when we stitch the other half, the 2 halves together, you will do this on both pieces that you have now. You have 2 halves of the quilt top now, and you'll do this on both. So you'll take out 4 diagonal stitch areas, and then when we stitch the 2 halves together, we'll pull some more stitches out. And what that will do, you'll see it'll allow us to have a nice flat center, because everything will be laying in a clockwise direction, or in the same direction. I'm not sure which one, but it'll prevent having that big lump right in the center of the quilt. Once you have these out, then you can press these in the clockwise direction. Now for illustration 8, this is our last seam for the quilt top. I have placed these right sides together. You'll have stacked seams, stacked seam, stacked seam, interlocking, interlocking. The center one will interlock, and we're going to come back and look at that. And then the same thing here, interlocking and stacked seams all the way across. When you come to the center, remember everything was pressed clockwise. So let's go zoom in and see how we match this center. This is pressed. This is kind of flopping open here, but it's pressed to the right in this picture. And if you can see where this line of stitching, let me hold this down, this line of stitching here intersects with the straight line that you just sewed. And these were where the stitches were removed, in this corner. You're going to put your pin right at this intersection, where this seam and that seam meet. Put it right there. And if you look, it should be where the seams intersect for the star point. And then you take your pin and you go on this side, right where the seams, all the points intersect for the star point. And then you put those 2 together. So now you do have an interlocking seam that you have matched up. So here is your perpendicular again. This seam is pressed to the right, and this seam is pressed to the left. So they interlock and then you've placed the pin so you can match all 8 of the points for the star. And when you come in, as you're stitching, you'll go stitch right where that pin went into the fabric, and then you'll have all your points meeting. And once you're finished, we'll come back because we have a few little bitty stitches to take out before we press. Now we've sewn the last seam of the quilt top, and we've sewed the 2 halves together, and we have a top. The first thing you do is make sure that you're happy with all of your intersections, especially with your center star, because now is the time to redo those if you're not. So I don't think you're going to see anything, but we're going to zoom in. So the sections, the lines meet pretty well in the center. So now we're going to fold this back, and this is our seam we just did. And to make this seam lay flat, we have 2 more sets of stitches to take out. Trying to get this to zoom, but it just won't. Here is the line we just stitched. And we're going to look above that, and it's kind of hidden in this little ditch in here. But there are some stitches right there. These stitches that go up, there's 3 or 4 of them. We're going to take those out. So let's dig in here with our, this is hard to see these, but pull those stitches out. I just can't get them. Okay, then you turn it over, and the same thing. Here's the seam we just stitched, and these stitches right here that go above the seam, in this case it's below it, but take these stitches out. These are a little bit easier to see, and I see they've already become loose from the front. So those are out. So now all these stitches are out, and what that's going to get you is the ability to press these sides in opposing directions. Let's lay it out. And if we go and press, you see it already kind of wants to. This seam is going this way, and so this seam needs to be pressed down like this. And then you'll see these seams are all going in this direction, and this seam over here will need to be pressed up. So since you have taken out all these stitches, these little things will rotate. And usually you just need to take your finger and rotate it, but play with it, and then there might be some little stitches that you missed. It looks like I missed some, so let me go and see what I missed. But they're laying pretty flat, you can see. But if you do it right, and I'm not going to say right, I'm just going to say if you're successful at it, you will have all of the little pieces laying right. So let me see if I can make this better, and we'll come back. Here is what I came up with. It's not perfect, but it's the center seam lays very flat. And my problem I had was there was some little stitches in here that didn't get taken out, and I just kind of worked with it. The idea is to put your finger on it and rotate it in this direction, and that it sort of falls in place. But I can feel this center, and it feels very flat, so I know there won't be a lump there, even though this isn't perfect. We just want it to look pretty. So this is the seam I just stitched, and this one over here. This one will be pressed in that direction up. This one will be pressed down. All of the seams in the center of this quilt will be going in the same direction. And once you press this, this is your last seam, and the quilt top will be done.